Emigration is one of the most effective ways to escape poverty or find better conditions for business development in foreign lands. Ukrainian men and women also actively left their native lands to seek a happier life abroad. A unique aspect of Ukrainian emigration was that not only peasants emigrated, but also educated individuals in the intelligentsia. The latter mainly left due to the oppression by the colonial authorities of the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires, and later due to the repressions of the Soviet authorities. As a result, powerful diasporas formed very quickly in the countries where immigrants from Ukraine settled. People not only united in communities to jointly defend their rights, but also started their own Ukrainian musical groups, creative unions, schools, church parishes, and even free universities. The first significant wave of specifically political emigration from Ukraine occurred after the defeat of the National Revolution of 1917 to 21. The Bolshevik occupying forces carried out mass shootings and repressed everyone who fit the definition of bourgeois, leading national politicians, scientists, and former ministers and officials in the governments of the People's Republic of Ukraine to leave the Ukrainian lands en masse. These people had no intention of ending their struggle. Soon, former UPR officials formed a government in exile, a government in emigration. Teachers and scientists opened schools, universities, and colleges throughout Europe, and musicians, poets, and artists created Ukrainian bands, theater troupes, creative unions, educational centers, and even scout organizations. This led to the emergence of institutions such as the Ukrainian Free University in Vienna, the Ukrainian Economic Academy in Podebrady, and the Ukrainian Higher Pedagogical Institute in Prague. After the USSR occupied the lands of Western Ukraine, a second powerful wave of Ukrainian emigrants, including OUN and UPA soldiers, left the region. Subsequently, a third wave of emigration occurred among dissidents. These individuals waged a continuous struggle for an independent Ukrainian state, created unique Ukrainian art, and developed Ukrainian science, since free development of art, science, and political life was impossible in Soviet Ukraine. Therefore, we owe much of our state's sovereignty to our diaspora.
No one will destroy the idea we served. It is worth enduring blows, not bowing our heads, even in misfortune. This is the duty of a great cultural nation, and we will fulfill this duty, said Milena Rudnytska, an extraordinary personality who achieved success as a teacher, politician, writer, journalist, and public figure. She was born into the well-known Rudnytsky family in Hawrylyshyn from Zborov, then Austro-Hungarian Empire, now Ternopil Oblast. She was educated at Lviv and Vienna universities. Holding a diploma as a teacher of philosophy and mathematics, she worked on the dissertation, Mathematical Foundations of Renaissance Aesthetics in Vienna. She married lawyer Ivan Lykhach, a well-known economist and journalist editor. During the First World War, their home in Vienna was the center of meetings of the Ukrainian political and cultural elite. In 1927, the couple's only son was born, who would later become an outstanding Ukrainian historian, Ivan Lykhach Rudnytsky. Milena Rudnytska dedicated her life to Ukrainian social and political work, and she stood at the origins of the Ukrainian feminist movement. In 1928, she became the head of the Central Board of the Union of Ukrainian Women. Under her leadership, it grew into a strong national organization. From 1928 to 1935, she was a delegate to the Polish Sejm from the Ukrainian National Democratic Union, working in its commissions on education and foreign affairs.
After the pastoral message from Andriy Sheptytsky on July 23, 1933, titled Ukraine in Death Convulsions, the political circles of Western Ukrainian society directed their efforts to inform the politicians of Western Europe about the Holodomor and organize help for the population of the Ukrainian SSR, leading to the creation of the Public Committee for the Rescue of Ukraine. Public organizations bombarded European governments with numerous official appeals, and famous Ukrainian men and women held personal meetings with European and American politicians. Everyone tried to convince the governments of the Western world to help starving Ukraine. For instance, Oleksandr Stasyuk, a former member of the Central Rada and Secretary General of International Affairs, presented evidence of the Holodomor in Paris at a conference of the International Organization of Combatants and then in Luxembourg in August 1933. With the support of some influential European political figures, the Committee for the Rescue of Ukraine hoped to bring the Holodomor case for consideration by the League of Nations. Milena Rudnytska was an unofficial ambassador and one of the main negotiators from the committee. In 1933, she became the deputy head of the Public Committee for the Rescue of Ukraine. She managed to meet privately with the head of the Council of the League of Nations, Johann Ludwig Movinkel, and convinced him to support the position of the Ukrainians. Although Movinkel put the Holodomor issue to a vote 4 times out of 14 participating countries, only 3 spoke in favor of helping Ukrainians. Western Europe was then interested in cooperating with the Soviet Union against Hitler's Germany.
Milena Rudnytska managed to effectively combine activities in the social and political fields with journalism. She headed the World Union of Ukrainian Women, was the head of the political women's organization Princess Olga's Army, was a member of the editorial staff of the Lviv weekly Nasha Meta, edited the weekly page of the newspaper Dilo, was the editor of the bi-weekly Zhinka and the magazine Zhinochi Vysnik. She wrote on political, feminist, and educational topics, highlighting issues such as female unemployment, women's education and careers, and balancing the roles of mother, housewife, and public figure. Her well-known work, Western Ukraine Under the Bolsheviks, is a collection of memories, mainly of residents of Lviv, about the first Soviet occupation from September 1939 to June 1941, documenting the criminal activities of the communists. In 1958, the second edition of this collection was published, thanks to the Shevchenko Scientific Society in the USA and the Ukrainian Free Academy of Sciences. Milena Rudnytska believed in the democratic future of an independent Ukraine and advocated for the fullest possible self-realization of women and their active participation in Ukrainian society, forming values and culture. Her ideas were and remain understandable and acceptable to people with different worldviews, political preferences, and beliefs. In Milena Rudnytska's work, national and women's issues were intertwined. Her efforts demonstrated how feminism and the defense of Ukrainian people's rights and interests could strengthen each other. She united women around a common interest in actively working for the good of Ukraine.
Ukraine has always existed for me, at least in my thoughts. Wherever I was, whatever I was doing, I always thought about what could be useful for Ukraine. A vivid example of patriotism and devotion to one's native country was the life of scientist, teacher, public figure, and philanthropist Bohdan Hawrylyshyn, who was called the most influential Ukrainian in the world. Bohdan Hawrylyshyn was born in the village of Kurtak in Ternopil Oblast in 1926. At the end of the Second World War, he ended up in Germany. He received his secondary education in a refugee camp. In 1947, he left for Canada, where he worked as a lumberjack and waiter. Over time, Hawrylyshyn moved to Toronto, where he entered university. The local newspaper wrote about him, the first lumberjack to enter the university. He earned a degree in mechanical engineering in 1952 and a master's degree in 1954. Starting from 1957, Bogdan Dmitrovich studied at the International Institute of Management in Geneva. Subsequently, he managed its educational programs and taught basic courses. For 18 years, he was the director of this educational institution. And in 1986 to 88, he was its honorary researcher.
Bohdan Hawrylyshyn trained many highly qualified specialists for hundreds of companies around the world, was a consultant and advisor on issues of public administration and international business for multinational corporations and national governments, and served as a speaker, moderator, and chairman at scientific and practical seminars and conferences in more than 70 countries. Hawrylyshyn is the author of more than 150 articles on management, management education, economic and political environments, as well as several books, including To Effective Societies, Roadmaps to the Future, published in 8 languages, and I Remain Ukrainian, memoirs. During his life, Bohdan Hawrylyshyn visited more than 90 countries. Fate was very generous to me. My dreams to know the world came true. After being elected as the director of the Management Training Center, I began to travel a lot to different countries for different purposes. In each of the countries, I did something useful. I did not travel as a tourist, Hawrylyshyn recalled. Especially memorable were his stays in India, Japan, Australia, Argentina, Iran, Brazil, Chile, and Venezuela. In Australia, for example, Bohdan Hawrylyshyn was one of the mediators of the consensus between government, business, and trade unions in the early 1980s, which preceded significant economic growth. However, he felt at home in Ukraine, Switzerland, and Canada.
Bohdan Hawrylyshyn was a co-founder of the European Management Forum in Davos, which over time turned into a world-renowned economic forum where the top figures of global business and politics began to gather every year. In 1972, he became a member of the famous World Forum of Scientists, the Club of Rome. In 1975, Bohdan Hawrylyshyn was awarded the Gold Medal of the President of the Republic of Italy and the Outstanding Engineer Award from the University of Toronto in 1986. Since the time of Ukrainian independence, Bohdan Hawrylyshyn has been an advisor to several presidents of Ukraine, prime ministers, and speakers of the Verkhovna Rada. He headed the advisory council under the Presidium of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine from 1991 to 1998, and was a member of the American-Ukrainian Advisory Committee. In addition, he was the chairman of the Regional Plast Scout Council, a member of the Executive Committee of the Swiss Forum on International Policy, and the chairman of the supervisory boards of the International Institute of Management and the International Center for Prospective Studies. In 2016, he was awarded the highest order of Ukraine that can be awarded to foreigners, the Order of Freedom, for a significant personal contribution to the rise of the international authority of the Ukrainian state, many years of fruitful scientific and philanthropic activity. Other recipients of the Order of Freedom include King Carl XVI Gustaf of Sweden, U.S. Senator John McCain, George Soros, Joe Biden, Angela Merkel, and Boris Johnson.
Bohdan Hawrylyshyn was the founder of the international charity foundation Renaissance. Until 1998, he headed the supervisory board of this organization, whose main goal was the development of the foundations of civil society in the cultural, educational, scientific, and social spheres of Ukraine. In 1995, Great Britain transferred to Ukraine the Faraday Antarctic Station, now known as Academic Rudnytska. The Ukrainian side purchased the station for a symbolic £1. However, there were no funds to send the first expedition to Antarctica. After hearing about this problem, Bohdan Dmitrovich helped the first Ukrainian Antarctic group. The Renaissance Fund allocated funds for the expedition. In 2010, he founded the Bohdan Hawrylyshyn Charitable Fund in Ukraine, with the key long-term program Youth Will Change Ukraine, to train young Ukrainians who will be able to form a critical mass of people that will transform Ukraine.
During the Revolution of Dignity, Mr. Bohdan created the Declaration of Human Responsibilities in 15 points, of which he reflected various human responsibilities as pointers to a more democratic, inclusive, and efficient society from the point of view of humanistic values. Having lived 3/4 of my life outside the borders of Ukraine, I always and everywhere introduced myself Bohdan Hawrylyshyn, Ukrainian, said a person who believed in the high potential of Ukraine, dreamed of transforming it into an effective European state, and contributed to its development.
Солодкий чай любеньких слів, ти серце моє, він перший раз сказав мені.